I want to talk about when trauma speaks. And it's so prevalent right now because the generation currently, I'd say 50 and below, which technically is a generation, is 50 years. But if you really look at all of this, the amount of trauma on people, childhood trauma, marital trauma, just relationship trauma, you name it, trauma from church, trauma from jobs, it's just layers upon layers of stuff people go through. And they say hurt people. And it's not, I think we have to understand, that is a cliche, I guess, but it's a huge fact. It's something that we've seen over and over. And it's not purposeful by any means, I don't believe. I don't believe most people are out maliciously just trying to hurt people. But because of their trauma, because of their pain, it oozes out onto other people. Sometimes it's as simple as you trigger a person in some way or multiple ways. And, they take it out on you. So I bring it up because I've had about, just this year alone, I've dealt with, I can think of 3 situations dealing with people who, actually 4, now that I'm thinking about it, dealing with people who have experienced trauma. And in some cases, some pretty massive trauma. And it can be hard to really deal with this. And as the person on the other end, sometimes it's walking on eggshells. How to navigate it it's almost impossible, because the truth is, you can do something inadvertently and it trigger a response. And depending on where that person is at, it has a lot to do with how it is reasoned, or if it is reasoned. So that brings me to this part about when trauma speaks. Because, like I said, it oozes out. It oozes out, and people get triggered. People vent. People pour out their frustrations and pour out their hurt on other people. Like I said, I don't believe it's on purpose. I don't believe it's malicious, but it is a side effect of the devastation of trauma. It's a side effect. It's there. And, if you've got any training in it, or if you've done any studying in it, it's kind of usually easy to spot. So I say this to say, you want to be well read on it, because you want to understand it, because so many people are dealing with it. And not only that, but you want to be able to approach people who have been through trauma. You want to approach them with love. You want to respond to them in love. And I think that would be my first key point, is responding in love. In one case, one person said, pray a blessing on them. Pray blessings on them. And I think the other thing would be to pray. Pray for them. Intercede for them, knowing that they desperately need healing. That they need that healing inside to be able to function properly, to be able to withstand life, to be able to have healthy relationships. So I'd say love the person, pray for the person. And I guess the last thing, I think this is the last thing, would be extend grace. Extend grace and compassion. And know, it's typically not malicious. It's typically not purposeful. It is a side effect of the trauma. And when you see that, when you know that, it really gives it a different dimension. It's a hard thing to deal with. Some people who've been through trauma are hard to be friends with. Sometimes they're hard to be in a relationship with. You name it. Show love. Show compassion and grace. I think the last thing I might add to that would be to always be ready to forgive. Always be ready to forgive. Because some of the people that have been through so much, they end up causing more hurt, more devastation, without even meaning to. And some of the things they may say, some of the things they may do, that you may be on the receiving end of, is going to require forgiveness. And forgiveness is a command. Let's keep that in mind. Forgiveness is a command. Love is a command. Grace is a command. All of these things, if you look in the Bible, it's all there. So when trauma speaks, these are just some of the things that you've got to be ready for. You've got to be willing to deal with. You have to be willing to do these things. Showing love, showing grace, showing compassion, praying for that person. Praying for that person. And most of the time we get caught up in our emotions, especially if we're on the receiving end. We get caught up in our emotions and we think, well, how could this person say that? Or how could they do this? And all of a sudden, now we're down the rabbit hole. Now we're down the rabbit hole of unforgiveness, of grudge, of anger and bitterness and all this other stuff. No. That is not the way. That is not the way. And it does you absolutely no good. The way of Christ is so much healthier. I can tell you right now that even from scientific and medical analysis, it's healthier, folks. It is healthier to have the Christ-like attitude in dealing with people. And especially people who have been through trauma, who've been through hurt. I can't stress it enough. And like I said, I've seen, at least that I can think of, at least 4 situations, one very recent and hurtful. But I understood what happened and where it came from. When trauma speaks, go back and listen to what I just said. You got to show love. You need to pray for them because they need it. Pray and intercede for their healing. Pray and intercede for their healing, for their sanity. Show them compassion and grace. And always be ready to forgive. Always be ready to forgive. That's what I've got right now. I'm sure I could expound. I'm sure I could give you fancy scriptures. I'm sure I could do a lot. But we're at 10 minutes almost. I think you get the picture. Or at least you should.